In 1995, came through the country where I was serving, and he told us, he opened up to Luke chapter 10 and began telling us about this man of peace or person of peace. And that really made an impact on me. And so I'm using now to describe for you what is happening in the country where I serve among CPM A and CPM B. These evangelists are going out into the communities. As new as they are believers, they know God's working out there. They don't know where, and they use the Quran as a bridge to try to find out where God is working. But they're looking for a specific person. They're looking for the one who responds. We call that person the man of peace, or here I call it the person of peace. So when you look at Luke chapter 10, verses 1 through 20, I want us to just go verse by verse and take a look at what we discovered and how it's being used in our country among CPM A and CPM B. First of all, in verse 1, we see that Jesus, He's gathered them together. He's telling them, look, I'm going to have you conduct an exercise here where you too can find where the Father is at work. You know, He probably told them, remember what I said in John 5:17 and 19? What I said there was that God is already at work out there, and you go out there and you can find where it is. So He sent them out 2 by 2. That's the first point. Why did He send them out 2 by 2? Well, I can think of a few reasons. One is, whenever you're being stoned, people are throwing rocks at you because you're out there preaching the gospel. If you're by yourself, you're concerned about one person. That's you. But if you're with another, you share, your compassion is not just on yourself, your focus, but it minimizes the situation. You're concerned about the person that's with you. Also, we know that in Ecclesiastes, whenever one of you falls down, the other is there to pick them up. I know several testimonies of people who have gone out, and as one person is sharing the gospel, the other person is praying. And it works out as a good team. You know, but the real reason, the main reason why I think Jesus sent them out 2 by 2 is this. Remember that we said that the Father shows us everything He wants to show us, and so that we will be amazed. Now, in a court of law, if there is the testimony of one, I think they accept that, but you know, you really can't verify a story based on the testimony of one. But I believe the laws of this land and around the world, the testimony of two can very much verify a story. You know, we can believe it. Well, Jesus is about to send them out there to see something that is really unbelievable. It's just amazing. Today I'm coming here and I'm telling you about the movement of CPM A, CPM B, but it would be even more powerful if I had some of those people, Abdul and others, who are standing right beside me and saying, yeah, that's right, I saw it, I was there, it's right. It adds to it. It's something so amazing. That many Muslims come to Christ? Well, if I was the only one telling you that story, yeah, you have every right to question. But we've sent in the CPM assessment team. We have others. There are people on the ground right now seeing it, so I'm not alone. And so it gives you confidence that it's true. What God is about to do is amazing. And, You need the testimony of two people to verify those stories. All right, secondly, in verse 2, believe in the harvest. Jesus says, it's kind of like when Babe Ruth walked up to the plate, and you know the story. He pointed out to the outfield, center field, because that's exactly where he was going to hit it. He knew he was going to do that. Well, did he really? He's a man. So when we hear those kind of stories, we think, that's being kind of cocky, self-confident there. But if you're perfect, if you're holy and perfect, we don't have a problem with you saying that there is a harvest out there. Now, remember that Jesus has not gone out into this community. It's a new place. He's not gone out there and done his survey. This is a brand new area. He himself had not gone there before. And here he is, before sending them out, saying, guys, there's something out there that is just huge, and it's ready. We call it the harvest. And I'm going to send you out there to go check it, to draw it in, to cultivate it. Believing that God is wanting to do, that He has a strategy for your people group where you're at, is vital. Even in this country where I'm working, there are missions and missionaries that still do not believe that God is moving among the Muslims there. It's really a sad thing, and they will challenge. They'll say, oh, no, we don't believe any of that. And it really hurts me because I feel sorry for them. They're missing out on the largest movement among Muslims today. It's right there. It's going right around them. It's passing them by. And that's a sad thing. If you have an overabundance of pessimism, I admonish you or encourage you, get rid of that. Be a believer. Look out there and say to yourself, there's something big out there, and I want a part of it. Before Jesus sends them out into the harvest field, He gives them a warning. He tells them about, He says, you guys are like a bunch of sheep, and there are wolves out there. Do not come back to me complaining about the cuts and bruises and the beatings. I'm telling you ahead of time, expect it. I kind of like that. If I had someone standing right beside me and I just, without warning them, I just punched them in the stomach, that would double them over, especially if I hit them hard. But if I told that person, hey, I'm about to hit you, okay? Get ready. Well, they would tighten up and they would be ready. And they would probably absorb the punch that I would give them. By telling people ahead of time, expect to run into danger, it helps us. It's a very compassionate thing to do that Jesus did here. He said, get ready, Don't let it hit you by surprise. And when you stop and think about it, what chances does a lamb have with a wolf right beside them or coming in close to them? Really nothing. So there's a hidden message here for us. Don't trust in anything you have. Put your trust solely in God. He's the only one who can save you. He's the only one that can save a lamb who's about to be attacked by a wolf. Now this next one in verse 4, it boggled me for years and years. Why in the world are we not supposed to take with us our laptop computers? I need it. I communicate with others and through it. Don't take your cell phone. Don't take your money. This has just boggled me. And now I'm not going to give you what why I think he sends us out in this needy mode. I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit. But just recognize you don't need all of these things. You don't need a laptop. You don't need tracts. You don't need all these things. They're wonderful to have, and I encourage you to use them to find where God is at work. But on this particular outing here, Jesus tells them, don't use anything. Don't take it with you. Go as a needy person. In verse 5, he is telling them to go out there, go house to house, and wherever you go, say to them, peace to this house. Now, I believe that there must have been Muslims back in those days, because that's exactly what we say, Salam alaikum, peace to you. I see this as Jesus is really advocating the massive seed sowing. Go to house, go to that community and give your peace for whatever house. That's where I get that from, why I think it's so broad, because it says whatever house you go to. And that is an indicator to me that you are to go into that community and make your presence known. Okay? Loudspeaker, whatever. Go into that area. I'll explain in a minute why you need to be involved in massive seed sowing or be very vocal and loud about spreading the gospel. Verse 6 says, and if the Son of Peace is there, your peace will rest on it. If not, it will return to you. Notice the word if. If a person of peace there. The person of peace, remember, is the person who God is working inside that person. And that's the one you're looking for. Now, he's not everywhere. That's why Jesus said, if you find a person of peace. So, you've got lots of people out in front of you. How are you going to find in that crowd a person of peace? Well, you got to go around. You got to talk to lots and lots of different people to find that. Once you find that person, identify them as a person of peace. Now, if they do not become a believer, they are not a person of peace. And I'm not talking about instantaneously, right there in front of you, but over time. For Muslims in CPM A and CPM B, it takes an average of 3 months to 6 months before they actually, from hearing the gospel, just what we call a clean, contextualized, understandable presentation of the gospel, it takes an average of 3 to 6 months. Later, they make a decision on it. Muslims need to sit on it for a while because they have so much things they have to work through. So really, we've never seen Muslims come to Christ just right then and there after sharing the gospel for the first time. But the person of peace will come to Christ, and you need to have your spiritual eyes and ears ready to look at that. Look for the unusual. You know, look like Jesus did, Zacchaeus. Oh, that's different. You know, God's ways are not our ways. Whenever the Spirit comes upon a person, He does things, you know, very passionately, wildly different, you know. I remember on one occasion where we went into a village, we called the imam, we sat down with a large group of Muslims, or maybe 50 to 75 in that crowd, and we began doing the Camel method here and talking. All the time I'm looking through the crowd. I know my Father's at work here. Now, who is it? Which person here is God working in? Well, we didn't find him. He didn't poke his head up. He didn't ask those magical questions about like, hey, can I have a copy of the Bible, you know, or can you come back and tell me more? You know, I'm listening for those kinds of things. So we got up and we left. And I learned a little secret here. I learned whenever you evangelize, make sure you leave slowly, especially when you're working with Muslims. And make sure you leave a trail of bread so that they can find you. Because Muslims, it's very intimidating for a Muslim. God's working in your life and you're in a crowd. all your peers are around you, you at that moment are not going to pop your head up and say, I'm the man of peace, come work with me. They won't do that. So on that particular day, we left slowly. We left on a bicycle. Really, it's a rickshaw van, and we all piled on the back of it. There were a couple of volunteers with me and a national church planter, and we were going away. And out of the crowd, as we moved away, I could see out of the crowd, here come a guy on a bicycle, a middle-aged man, and he was pumping that bicycle back and forth, headed straight for us. We had left a lot of tracks there, and when he got up to us, of course, we're a little bit nervous with a guy coming bearing down on us like that. And he said, hey, where's my track? Where's that paper? I didn't get one. We said, well, we handed them all out. Why don't you just ask someone there to give it to you? No, I want one for myself. And I want to talk to somebody about this. I said, oh, okay. Well, and I pointed to the church planter who lived in that area. And I said, you know what, why don't you come to his house? And he'll be happy to talk to you. And, of course, he was. And now, from that was the man of peace. And he went back into his community. And today, there is a Jamaat there. There's a church, and that guy is the pastor of it. There's about 12 Muslims in that village of about 300. So identify the person of peace. There are clues as to, if this is the man of peace or not. Listen to him. If he tells you, I had a dream the other day, and the prophet Muhammad appeared to me, and I saw the prophet Isa, and Muhammad was pointing his finger saying, not me, follow him. That's a very common dream among Muslims. Do you say, well, I'll get back with you tomorrow? Or, can we talk about that at another time? I've got my calendar here. I'll schedule you in. Remember, when you find where God is at work, stop what you're doing right then. The invitation is for you to work right then, not later. You'll miss out on the opportunity. And so put on your spiritual lenses and put on your spiritual ears and listen. You can find that man of peace. Now, not right off the bat. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of experience to find a man of peace. One clue here that Jesus gives us in verse 7 is that the man of peace will take care of you. It says, and remain in that house, eating and drinking such things as they will give you. If this man takes you into his house and he takes care of you and especially if you're an outsider, you're a Christian, and this Muslim is saying, hey, come to my house. I always accept those invitations. Not always is that a man of peace, but just because of the scriptures here, he wants me to go to his house. I go there, and I stay with him. I'm just checking out to see if God's at work inside this man. Think back up to verse 4. We said that Jesus wanted his disciples to go needy. Why is that? Well, there's a setup here. God has made an arrangement. You see, he has gone ahead of you into that area, and his Spirit. I used to have the biggest head when I was going out to the mission field. Everybody was patting me on the back saying, you the missionary, and you the man. And you go out there and you win them to Jesus and come back and tell us about it. And I went out with such a big head, and I would go into those villages, and I'm ashamed to tell you this, but I was thinking these kind of thoughts. Here I am. I'm taking the gospel into this area. First time, nobody's ever been here before. Nothing has ever been here before. I'm bringing the gospel in, and I'm going to deliver it to the people. And then I'd go out and pray, Lord, I just sowed the seed. Now you, with your Spirit, go in and do your thing. Very prideful. I'm from Texas, by the way. And you know what they say about pride. It's the only disease that I can have that makes you sick. Well, I found out very quickly that I wasn't the first one in those villages. Every place we went, the Holy Spirit had beat me there and was working inside somebody. And my job was not to go in there and blast them all and make them be converted. My job was just a very simple thing. Go in there and find where the Spirit was working. In who? Who was the man of peace? Well, the assignment that God has gone ahead, He sent His Spirit ahead, and He's given the man of peace an assignment. His job is to take care of you. He'll feed you, He'll shelter you, He'll protect you. Everything you need, He will be available to take care of that. That's why you go needy. Because if you go with all of the laptop and all of this equipment and everything, it just gets confusing. And because this is the way God has lined it up. He's looking for you just as much as you are looking for Him. Okay? So that's why you need to be loud, you need to make noise so that He can find you. Then you need to be in a position where you can recognize this is the man. I'll stay with him until I find out if he is a man of peace. And notice that in verse 7, he does say, Jesus says, stay in that house. Don't be like me when I was with the youth. Just, I have my goal. I'm going to hit every house in that neighborhood. As Baptists, that's what we do. We evangelize all the people we can, and we feel good about that. I remember a group of Baptists came out to our area in, it's be about 94. And it's a group of about 30 of them. They came to my house where I was living in that time, out in a kind of like a village area. And they worked that whole area. If it was breathing, they witnessed to it. At the end of that time period, and they would come back every night and give testimonies. I led 150 to Christ today, or I led 50 people to Christ. And when they left, they handed, before they left, they put in my hand 6,323 decision cards. I said, man, I was excited. I was brand new on the field. I was pumped. Well, I got 3 men. And I asked them, hey, 3 nationals, I said, would you go and follow up on all these people? Let's find out what's going on, and let's begin our follow-up. Well, we put together a survey, and we sent them out. These 3 men, for 3 months, they interviewed 2,000. That's how many they found. Those addresses were hard to find. It's Third Rock down the coconut tree to the right, but they found 2,000 of them. And I was so shocked. 96% of them said, no, we had not become believers. We did not become Christian. But we would if the Baptist Mission would give us a tube well or a tutor program or give us, some kind of facility. We would gladly become a Christian. Well, that's not the ones we're interested in. The other 4% said, no, we didn't. We raised our hand by mistake. We didn't make any decision. We found 0. Not a single person had come to faith in Christ. But they did a good job of canvassing the whole area, I told that group, the next time y'all come, slow down. When you have somebody who and don't do that trick of raising your hand and saying, if you raise your hand and want to believe, because people in third world countries, they'll raise their hand no matter what. So just go and share like you did, make a few adjustments. And but when you find someone who's responsive, stay with that person. Remember I told you earlier, I believe that we can win, a few to Christ. Few Muslims in the community where you're at. But that man of peace, you're always an outsider, you're always a stranger, but that man of peace, he'll win the whole lot. Okay? He's the insider. This is the system, and that's how it's working in CPM A and CPM B. You just find that guy, he becomes a believer, and then you send him out. Notice in verse 7, Jesus reiterates, stay. At the beginning of the verse, he says, remain in that house. Now look at the very last of that verse. He says again, do not go from house to house. Stop. You have just found where the Father is at work. Lay aside your agenda and join the Father. Because this is how, this is the best way of working. Now, so we know why you don't take anything with you, because the man of peace is going to take care of you. In verse 8, if there was ever a verse in the Bible where I wish I could take an eraser and mark it out, it's this one. I'm not going to do that, but this one really troubles me, and I almost wish that Jesus wouldn't have said this. Obviously, I'm wrong in that, but he says, whatever city you enter and they receive you, that means like the man of peace, eat whatever is put out in front of you. And this is a very difficult thing. And I've eaten so many different things, oxen tongue, seaweed, and water lilies. I just can't, things that I don't normally eat, this man of peace. I wish Jesus would tell them, serve the guy, the missionary, some food that he prefers. But it's not that way. So we will not mark out verse 8. We will keep it in there, and we'll eat whatever the man of peace lays out there in front of us. Verse 9, before you leave that area. Now this is a strain for many of us Baptists, but do this. Jesus said it. Pray for healing for people in that area. So before you leave, pray for the people there. Pray that they'll be healed. And it's not only that, for physical healing. Pray for the political situation in that area. Pray that will be resolved. Pray that the gangs and all the crime in that area, pray against that. Pray for the person who is in front of you. Pray for their business, that this person will be blessed of God. Even if somebody's not healed, even if the situation doesn't resolve itself there and become peaceful, they still appreciate when people pray for them. It's a great way of showing compassion. Now, we said that that the Spirit has gone ahead of us and is working here and there. But do note that the Spirit does not work everywhere. He's not working inside everyone at one time. That's why Jesus said earlier, if you find a man of peace. Now, so he tells his disciples here in verses 10 and 11 that if you do not find a man of peace, don't stay there. We're talking about lordship here. God is the master. He is the boss. If you stay in that area and keep working, trying to make something happen, remember Jesus said, I can do nothing on my own, and neither can you. But if you stay in that area, I believe you're actually telling God, I'm in control. I can make it happen. You need to be the servant. If God's not working there, you don't work there. Move on. Well, we know the rest of the story, and I won't read it, but the disciples, they came back and gave the report, and I know they were changed. Many of them, I'm sure, said, I don't know if I'm going to do this. This is scary. But as they went out in a group, and that's what we advocate in this Camel seminar. Usually it lasts 2.5 days is the way we do this. And on the second day, in the afternoon, we stop the teaching and we send them out, everybody. And of course, at that point, expect people to grumble and say, I'm kind of nervous and scared. This is outside of my comfort zone. If you send them out as a group, there's comfort there, especially for introverts. They will go out. And when they come back, usually what I hear, the comments are, I didn't know we could do that. You know, hey, this is so easy. You know, they always come back with reports like that. And then you let them feed that to each other. And they will receive encouragement and boldness from that. In the year 2001, we decided that we would take this, very seriously. This Luke chapter 10, where Jesus told them to go out and do it just like this. And so we tried it. I had 2 volunteers with me from Texas. They came and I asked them ahead of time. I said, look, would you read Luke 10, 1 through 20? And let's try our hardest to do exactly what Jesus said. Let's see what we find, So they came and we went out to an area where I knew in this entire area there were no Muslim background believers. There were no Jamaats at all. And so I said, let's go to that one city right there and see if we can find a man of peace. We did cheat a little bit. We kept our shoes and our shirts, but we had a backpack, and in the backpack we had one change of clothes because we were going to be out for a week. One change of clothes. We had the Jesus film and some Bibles in the local language. One Bible. So we set out that day and just got off the bus and just started walking. Didn't know where we were going to stay, where we were going to sleep that night. And now on the way, we talked to everybody we could along that road. That was our destination out there. Notice, we didn't go over that, but go back to that passage there and see that Jesus said, don't talk to anybody along the way. Go straight to where I'm sending you. Well, we just couldn't quite grasp, what does that mean? Here are Muslims in front of us, we got to share. So we did, but we saw no results. Nobody responded to what we had to say along the way. Once we got up into the city, again, we practiced the what Jesus told us there about being very loud. So in that city, we talked to people everywhere we could and told them who we are and why we're there. Now, I spoke the local language, and the 2 volunteers did not, so I would interpret for them. But when I interpreted, I made sure I used Muslim terminology. So we didn't find anything that day. Here we are. We have no place to stay. There was a government building there, and so we went over to that building and asked the guy there. We had heard that there's a little room on the back where some guests could stay, and we said, "Can we stay there tonight?" And they said, "Sure." We had to pay for it, but they opened up that little room. Well, I remember that room. It was just 2 beds. I slept on the floor. And there was a huge window on one side. This room wasn't any bigger than maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. And there have been at least 50 children at our window sticking their noses through looking at us. So I said, hey, this is not the zoo. Now, if you're going to stand here and look at us, you're going to have to pay us 5 cents because that's how much it costs at the zoo. Well, that comment kind of dispersed the crowd, and they went on home. We were so tired and exhausted. Been out all day, thousands of people that we'd come in contact with. And here it was about 10 o'clock at night, and we laid down, just as tired as could be. Well, as soon as we laid down, there was a knock on the door. I got up, I opened the door. There were two Muslim men standing there. They said they wanted to talk. Well, now you need to know that my spiritual radar was down in the off position. And so I told those two guys, can you come back tomorrow? We're really tired tonight. I think another reason why Jesus tells us to go 2 by 2 is because when my spiritual radar is off, my partner here, his happened to be on. So he, nudged me and said, hey, talk to him. I said, for you, I'll talk to him. Okay. What's your story? So I asked these two guys to quickly, tell me what's going on here. My radar still had not come up yet. And so they said, 4 years ago, there were 4 missionaries from another country that came to our village. And this is one of the two men relating the story. And he said, and the missionaries came to my house, and my daughter was sick. She had something wrong with her leg. He told me, but I forgot what he said. There's something wrong with her leg. Those missionaries put the daughter on the table, stretched out their hands, and in the name of Isa, they prayed for the daughter. Well, that was all they told me. So I'm standing there and say, okay, can you tell me the rest of the story? I said, well, she did get better, but, that's it. I said, all right, let me get this straight. Those guys came, they prayed in the name of Isa. That was 4 years ago, so what are you doing here now? What do you want? They said, well, we heard that there were some men, you guys, who had come to our city. And you were talking about Isa. And so we came here because we want to know more. My spiritual radar in the on position, I got it. You're the man of peace. And by the way, most of the time, the man of peace ends up finding you than you finding him. Okay? You're one, he's a billion, inside a billion people out there. He'll let him find you. But you have to make yourself known. That's why you have to struggle with this security issue. If you got high security, closed, it just limits all the men of peace who are looking for you. So I sat down with these two guys, and I shared with them for about 2 hours, giving them the gospel. It just amazed me that 4 years they've been waiting for somebody to come and explain the rest of the story. Why was there power in this name, Isa? And there was a Christian community, large Christian community, back from the days of William Carey. And it just gone on generation after generation. So I asked the two guys, I said, you know about that Christian community not far from here? They said, yeah. So, well, why didn't you go to them and ask them? They said to me, well, we don't like Christians. We don't trust them. So on that day forward, I learned, stay with the terminology, use Muslim terms, because Muslims just do not relate or want to relate to Christians. Even men of peace have a fear of going to Christians. For several years, we had tried to gain access to preaching the gospel to Muslim women. We were really convicted about that because our work basically was among Muslim men. Every time we'd go into a village and try to give the gospel to Muslim women, they would pull their head covering over and they would run from us, and which is understandable. And it wasn't really the right thing for us to do, men coming into a village and talking to Muslim women. So we still wanted to talk to them, and this was something that's burning on my heart for several years. So I don't know why, but I asked these two guys, I said, hey, and this is after we finished sharing the gospel with them, we'd like to talk to some Muslim women. We want to share this story with them. can you get us access? They said, okay, we'll come pick you up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Morning, they came, they got us, they took us out to a very outside the city to a remote place. There was a real skinny house, had 2 floors on it. They took us up to the 2nd floor, and as I walked in, I was just so amazed. There were 25 Muslim women, all lined up perfectly, sitting there on the floor, waiting on us. So myself and the 2 volunteers, we sat up on the bed, and we had our story and pictures, and we shared the gospel from Genesis all the way to the birth of Jesus. Typically, Muslim women are mostly uneducated, and their attention span isn't that long. They sat there for 3 hours listening to us explain story after story, all the way up to the birth of Christ. When it came to that time, I reached in the backpack and I pulled out the Jesus film in the local language. And I said, we've told this story to you now, but if you would like to watch the rest of the story from the birth of Isa and watch his life, look at this video. But you know what? I don't have a TV. I don't have a VCR. Well, the men of peace stood up very quickly and said, hey, no problem, we'll take care of it. Within 30 minutes, they had run to town, and on a rickshaw had brought back out, they rented a TV and a VCR. Set it up, we popped in the Jesus film, and for 2 hours, the women sat there and ate that. Now, normally, in these types of circumstances, the foreigner, the rich guy, normally has to pay for that. They never asked me a dime for any of that rental of that equipment. And so I was just amazed. I even offered. They said, no, we got it. And I knew they were poor guys. Well, then came time for dinner, for food. A lot of people here, and it's already past eating time. So we made mention of that, and they said, yeah, we need to eat. So the 2 men of peace, boom, they ran back into the city, rounded up some food in boxes, brought it back out, and served it up. Again, I offered, but they said, no, we've got it. And I know they didn't have the money to pay for that. We went back into that area 6 months later. I had sent a national church planter in there just about a month after we had left, and he had baptized a core from that group. But when we went back in there 6 months later, we found 5 churches and 125 baptized. And most of them women. And they were leaders. We had empowered those women, I guess, instead of the men like we normally do. And here they were the leaders of these 4 of the 5 Jamaats had women leaders. Now, I know that they had men mixed in there, and I guess slowly men would rise up and become leaders, but it was void. And so they took the leadership there. Those are the only churches that I know of in the movement that are led by women. I just called over to check with the SC, the strategy coordinator in that area, just before coming over here, and I asked, what's the update? How's that place going? And they said, well, there's 300 now that are baptized in that area, and really that's not counting the offshoots of where the gospel has gone and others have been, other churches have been started. So from that time on, we decided, it doesn't cost that much money to go and do church planting. And when you do it just like Jesus says, you can look for a harvest. We found the man of peace. Actually, the man of peace found us. We would have won maybe 1 or 2 people in that city, that area. But those 2 guys, the movement has started because they're insiders.